Hey everybody, it's Will with Schedulefly, and man, we've got a special guest here today with us, Chester Kroeger from Fuddpuckers in Destin, Florida. And I've known Chester for a long time now. He's been a great customer for a while, and Chester was kind enough to be one of the folks that was in our first book, Restaurant Owners Uncorked, back in 2011. And we've also had him on our film series, and we just always, I love talking to Chester. I learn a lot from him. He's been at this for quite some time. He started Fuddpuckers 36 years ago, 1982, and it was out of a snack bar in a nightclub, and now he's got this massive, incredible place down in Destin that's got everything from, just a great restaurant to a live alligator park, retail store. It's just a huge, family-friendly destination, and is absolutely a destination, and it's an institution down in Destin. And most likely you've seen a Fuddpuckers T-shirt along the way wherever you've been, because these shirts are all over the place, and they've sold tens of thousands of these things over the years, I'm sure, and that's part of what they do as well. So he's developed a really unique, fun, exciting, and sustainable brand. Sustainable meaning they've been at it for 36 years and they're still cranking. So Chester, man, thank you very much for taking time to be on here today.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm sorry that we haven't had an opportunity to talk more over the years, but it doesn't seem possible that it was in 2011 when we did our interviews. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know, man. It's really wild, and that was back when you guys were dealing with. We actually did it in 2010. I think the book came out in 11. We did the interviews in 2010. You guys were dealing with that. Was it like the BP Gulf oil spill back then? I think, which was
we were dealing with that, and in addition to that, we had gotten fairly heavily invested in some real estate holdings, and the crash of 2006 was still having its way with us. So it was I look back on those interviews, and I'm surprised I was in such a good mood.
Well, you always have been, man.
There was a lot going on, man.
You always have been. I know. Well, tell me. So, we're going to get into a lot of stuff today, but one of the things that really I thought was just really interesting and memorable about what you've done is, and you talked about during that interview, is having a hook to draw people in. You've got several really good hooks there, things that make people want to come there and want to be there, and several of those things are very unique, including the alligator. So talk to me a little bit about why you've always thought that was important, what some of the big hooks are at Fuddpuckers now, and maybe anything you've done. You may have done some things new recently, I don't know, but that's been a big part of your philosophy. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I've and this isn't something that came to me overnight. It was a long time coming to the decisions, to the feeling that you had to have something more than just food, and that's not necessarily always the case. There are restaurants that do very well with just food, and their hook is just good food or great service. But I felt that in order to grow my business to a level that I wanted it to grow to, that I needed to do something else. And the first hook that I had was a T-shirt. The T-shirt was really catchy, and that's the thing. I always felt that if someone purchased a piece of apparel from me, whether it was a T-shirt or a hat, that they would be a walking billboard for my restaurant.
Yeah.
And, in the early years, that's exactly what happened. We only had one T-shirt, and you'd see them everywhere because they were, incredibly recognizable. No way to distinguish or to say that it was something else or to question it. Today, we have about 28 different styles, and frankly, I'm starting to wonder if that's not a mistake because they're not as identifiable as they once were. We still sell a lot of T-shirts, don't get me wrong, but I'm starting to have this thought process go through my mind about whether it's time to refine the shirt down to 5 or 6 types and styles, which are more identifiable. The the next hook that we kind of came up with was the playground. The playground was um, put in place largely because I saw a change in the market in Destin. It used to be sort of a spring break area, and it was always families and fishermen and what have you. But it just really turned more and more toward family, and doesn't take a genius to figure out that McDonald's led the way with that. And, I said, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So we put a really nice playground out front, and lo and behold, it packed out with kids. And it was really nice for people to be able to let their kids play while they were having a drink or, just waiting for their table. Then we brought in entertainment. And entertainment at Fuddpuckers took several gyrations. Initially it was just there to make people happy during the waiting list. And then at some point we decided that we were going to get into late night. And we did a very good job with that for the longest time. And then eventually that faded away because the markets change. The last hook, and probably the biggest one, is the alligators. And we sort of fell into that. We had this pond in the front part of the property that we had tried a few things, like an oyster bar and whatever else on the deck around that pond, and nothing really worked. So we were down at a restaurant show, and my partner Tim saw this display with plastic alligators and fiberglass this, and he walked up and met the guy that owned the business, and we told him kind of what we had up here in Destin, and he says, well, I think maybe I need to come up there and take a look at it, because I think you could probably do more with your pond than throwing a plastic alligator in there to float around, which was the original idea. So Gerald came up to Destin about 3 months later and wandered around the property, and came back and said, I think that you guys need to put live alligators in your pond. Tim and I were like, I'm not so sure about that idea. And he says, well, think about it. What do people come to Florida to see? And I said, well, the beach. And he says, oh, that's on the list. It's not very high up. I said, what? He says, yeah, I mean, the number one and number two things that people come to Florida to see are animals. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, the first one's a mouse. Mickey Mouse, number one tourist destination in the world. Okay, I get it. And he says, and the number two thing is alligators. They come to Florida, they want to see Mickey Mouse and want to see an alligator. And I said, that's crazy. And he said, no, it's absolutely true. And the data had come back in that time frame from the Florida welcome centers. What do people want to do when they come to Florida? So there you go. And of course, we took it from, just putting a few alligators in a pond to feeding them and then taking pictures with them and then, selling, trinkets and what have you. And it is actually, if anything, that part of our business has grown exponentially over the last 5 years or so. We brought in a new management team, and it is the thing that drives our day business. You can, Destin's always busy during the summertime, and springtime as well. But you can go by even a beachfront restaurant in the middle of the summer, and they won't be packed. They're sitting right on the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
But you go by my place, and it is just wall to wall. You can't find a parking space. And it's because of those alligators.
So it's families are there now, and the kids want to see the gators. And what a great thing, and get pictures. And you have it's hard to fully describe it without just seeing it. And I'm sure you've got pictures and stuff on your website. I mean, it's a big area out front. There's how many gators do you have out there? I mean, it's a really cool. It really is fantastic. It's one of those things that you don't forget it when you go see this because it's so unique. You would not expect that, right? And then you go and you're like, gee whiz, this is even cooler than I thought.
Well, there's over 100 of the alligators in the pond, and then we have one which is an albino alligator.
Yeah,
and her name is Pearl. One of very few in captivity, and they don't live in the wild because they get eaten because they're different. But we also are in the process of putting together a baby alligator exhibit, and it should be completed within the next week. And then next year, we will have a large alligator exhibit. In addition to all that, all this stuff is all new since you were here, Will. We also have a museum that we put in underneath the deck. And that serves as like an educational experience for people who want to learn a little bit more about alligators and reptiles and what have you. And we've actually had hundreds and hundreds of field trips from local schools as far as Pensacola up in over toward Tallahassee come over and do these tours. We also have a new thing called Gator Experience, where you pay a fee and you get to be for 3 hours. You get to be a gator attendant. So you get to do everything that our staff does, but it's structured to be a learning experience. So you literally experience the alligators at a very different level than just looking over the railing and looking at them.
So this is really cool. I mean, you guys have really done a great job of iterating with the business and noticing trends and capturing. I mean, here we are, a business that started out in a snack bar, got really popular because of T-shirts, and now you have these alligators. It's all around a restaurant, but it's so much more than that. What a neat thing that you've just let this business evolve and change and thrive, and you've leaned into things that you see work really well and been creative and unique. Man, I think that's just really cool. It's just great to see, and I guess that's really a part of why here we are 36 years later, and you guys are still
Yeah,
cranking.
it's innovative. You got to, if you don't change with the times, guess what? They're going to change without you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then let me ask you this, because when did you had the second location? When did you open that?
Well, my first location was actually at Nighttown, of course, in Destin, and then we went out to the beach in Walton County.
Fort Walton, right?
No, Walton County.
Walton County, okay.
Yeah, that's over by Seaside and all that stuff, Sandestin. And we were there for a few years, and then that place burned down, and we opened up on Okaloosa Island in Fort Walton in 1986. We kept that business in place until, let's see, what is it? It's 2012.
Okay.
Right. And then we got out of our lease and moved into another lease for a waterfront piece of property on Okaloosa Island.
Okay.
Now that restaurant we kept going for 5 years. Unfortunately, it never did what we needed to do to make it profitable. And we were fortunate enough about, 6 months ago to sell our interest in the business. And, we took a little bit of a beating on it, but the reality of it is that it changed our lives. And, this is a lesson for a lot of people. I'm not trying to be like the educator today, but, life it throws a lot of stuff at you. Sometimes, you're dealing with something and you're thinking it's the absolute worst thing that you can possibly imagine. And surprisingly, if you let it do it, it can turn into something that is just a game changer.
Yeah.
And for us, not having the stone around our neck and not having the worry and the financial drain of that business, despite all of our, I never gave up on the darn thing. I was throwing just a lot of money at this thing, trying to make it work, and just 24/7 thinking about what can I do, what am I doing wrong, what am I doing right, what can I do to get more business in here, et cetera, et cetera. And when that thing sold, all of that went away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I have actually, number one, I'm better off financially. Number two, um, it, my days are different. I don't have the same pressure that I did before, and I have more time to do things that I think maybe are more important, like taking time with my wife, or going to see the grandkids, or focusing on my Destin business and doing what I need to do there to enhance it with a singular focus. So that's the story of the Fort Walton Beach experience. I love Fort Walton Beach. I wish it had worked, but I'm very glad to be alone again in Destin.
Well, doesn't it give you the ability, because you're not dividing your time, and really probably not dividing it 50-50? It sounds like you probably spent a lot more time on that one because you're trying to make it work. But now, I mean, all the things you just talked about that you're doing there in Destin probably
Yeah,
could potentially be a direct result of the creativity that was opened up by having only that one focus. Like a museum, like all that stuff is just, I mean, the time and energy and just creativity to even come up with that and make that happen is probably significant. But I would guess that may not have even happened if you were still trying to balance the two.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah,
No question about it. There's only so many hours in the day, and frankly, there's only so much money in the bank. So when you're spread thin, it really, really changes what you can and can't do.
Do you own that building there in Destin, Chester?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you do. Okay, did you lease it initially or did you buy it on the?
No, I bought the property originally back in 1980. Golly, what year did we buy that thing? I think we bought it in '87 and opened in '89. All right. Yeah, that's about right.
Okay, so you've owned, okay, because you've got, I mean, that gives you the flexibility to do so many of these things you've done, and really to grow within the walls of the, well, not even within the walls, outside of the walls too, but
Yep.
within the confines of the property. But it allows you to really have that flexibility to do something. Just once again, it's just a unique place. There's nowhere else like it for sure, anywhere. And I'm just excited to hear that, man. I'm excited to hear that you guys are able to focus on that now, because it's going to probably pay many, many dividends, like you said, both financially and just personally with time and stress and everything else.
It's exciting.
Let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead.
Exciting. No, it's an exciting time.
You one thing I thought was really cool that we touched on before, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about is because you have a lot of these ideas, you have a lot of creativity, you have all along, and I'm sure that spreads throughout your organization. I know that you reward your staff for successful ideas as well. It gets them thinking. Talk a little bit about that, because I thought that was really cool how you guys do that, and an example of where that's played out.
Sure. Let's say well, first off, it's a very open deal. My doors are always open. If someone has an idea, if they have a complaint or this or that or the other thing, even though there's a chain of command, if they're not getting the resolution that they want, or if they really want to come see me about something, my door is always open. So it's kind of critical that you have that. But as relates specifically to what you're talking about, let's say someone comes up with an idea, for creating a new menu item, or for that matter, a new slogan for a T-shirt. We basically reward them for that. And it's a financial reward, and of course they get, accolades. But that's, I think, important to, bring your employees into your business. They serve a function, and that's fine. But when they can actually feel like they're taking part in moving the business forward, it means an awful lot.
Mm.
And we have, even with just the one location, we probably have close to 300 employees. Uh, that sounds crazy, but we're we're open an awful lot of hours during the course of the week, and it is a crush period right now. So um, we have two kitchens running full bore and what have you. Anyway, I get a lot of people that come to me with ideas. 90% of them, unfortunately, we are not able to act on, but there are several that have come across the table over the years that made sense. I've got a very creative kitchen manager right now, and although I'm the one who's been the menu person for all these years, she pushes me, and it's very refreshing. We put something on the menu the other day that I was a little hesitant to put on the menu. It's a gator sausage, and
Mm.
it she found this product, and it is, we had served alligator and have been for years, but gator sausage somehow didn't appeal to me. But she made me taste it, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is better than the best andouille that I've ever had. And so we put it on the menu, and it's been selling like hotcakes. So obviously, Susan's going to get some kind of a reward for doing that. Um, I'll get a guy that works in my purchasing department and comes to me and says, I think we need to do this as opposed to this. One of our initiatives right now is to get rid of plastics. We can't get rid of all of them, but we can certainly do some, like maybe the straws, or um, maybe the lids that we're putting on some of our cups. And all these things, especially in the way our world is going right now, with people being thinking more about green, um, those types of things will pay dividends in the long run. So that's how we do it. And then, we also reward employees for performance goals. And we do that in several ways. We obviously keep track of their sales. And they get, if they achieve a certain level of sales in the course of a day, they get an immediate reward with what we call FUD bucks. So they can, either buy another t-shirt or eat something, and it doesn't cost them anything. Another way that we do it is at the end of the year, we have an employee party. It's right around Christmas, and we um, have several categories that we come up with, and it changes sometimes year to year. But it's high sales. It's employee of the year as voted on by the managers. It's manager of the year as voted upon by the employees. It's Father Fudd's favorites, which that's me, obviously. And I look at certain things that people have done somehow that stood out to me over the course of the year, and I give out sometimes as many as 4 uh, awards to people who I think stood out because of their dedication or their work ethic or whatever you want to call it. Um, so there's so many things that we try to do, and the bottom line is we could do more. We could do an awful lot more, because, and we will, and that's part of the beauty of not having this stone around my neck. I can now start thinking about things that we can do to further ingratiate ourselves as a management team with our staff. Um, Let me talk about that for just a second. It is getting harder and harder to find quality people. This year, it's probably the first time that I've ever had as many foreign students employed in my establishment. Um, we have probably 50 foreign students this year on a J1 visa program.
Mm.
And they come from places like China, Thailand, Jamaica. We have not been able to staff our kitchens with quality people from the local population, and it's tough. So the more we can do, the way I'm tying that back in is, the more we can do to make Fuddpuckers, the employment experience at Fuddpuckers, special and rewarding is the more people that we can maybe attract from our local talent pool. And part of the reason that there's so many problems with employment here in Destin is that there's so many restaurants,
Mm.
there's so many new businesses, and you only have so many people to draw from. Um, but that's why it's important to make your business stand out in terms of how you take care of your people, what opportunities you provide them, what kind of reward structure you have in place, so they don't feel like they're just coming in and busting their butt and making minimum wage or whatever it is they're making.
Yeah.
Of course, haven't paid minimum wage in a long time. But does that help?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm actually curious about that because we hear this so much lately with labor. Is it? You mean Is it? Is it just supply and demand, or is it also people are interested in doing other things and working in restaurants these days, or is it? I mean, why is it that? I mean, there must be people that maybe in the past would have worked at a restaurant that don't now. If you're having to hire so many of these foreign students, and by the way, they're only here for a short period of time, right? So are you turning them over every year? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
We sometimes we get them back, Will. In fact, we highly recommend that people come back if they can. In some respects, it provides them with an option to get into a program where they can earn citizenship, which is kind of cool. But in answer to your question, this is not going to be Mr. Politically Correct answering this question.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that I've been around a long time. I'm 60, going to be 63 this year. And I've been in this business for 36 years. I have never, ever seen the talent pool as poor as it is today. And it really goes down to work ethic. I don't know what the heck's going on. I mean, I have my own personal beliefs politically or whatever you want to call it, but I just don't see the younger generation that we're dealing with right now wanting or willing to put forth the effort to take the same path that I took to success. It's almost as if they feel entitled.
Mm.
I'm so and so. I'm cool, and I need to get $20 an hour. Well, maybe you should figure out that you should earn that $20 an hour. Step into a role, do the job well, get a raise, move forward, then get your $20 an hour. But they want it immediately, and they're not worth it. It is just absolutely comical what I see, literally day to day, from expectations. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know how to address this other than there has to be a reckoning. It's kind of where the rubber meets the road. More and more people these days seem to think that money is just there. They don't understand that if they're on some type of a dependency program, that money comes from somewhere. It comes from someone else who made it and then paid it into the federal government or the state government or the local government in order for them to receive that stipend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, well, let me have money.
Well, what are people? I mean, what are they doing, Chester? Like, what are people that don't? Hey, I need $20. Where? I mean, nobody's going to pay somebody that when they don't have. Where are these folks working? What are they doing to?
Well, they're not
support themselves. Are they living at home as adults, or are they? I mean, what do they do?
Well, I do know this. There are more, or have been in the last year or so, more people living at home.
Yeah.
Than ever before. And when I'm not talking about, somebody that's 20, I'm talking about somebody that's 25, 28, 30. Now, things have changed a little bit in the last couple of years. There are more jobs out there. There definitely, I mean, they may not be high paying jobs, but we're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround in terms of people who want to work being able to find work and find it in some respects in their fields.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully that trend will continue and we won't go into another recession and we'll see the job markets retract. But um, I mean, as far as restaurants are concerned, it's not necessarily the most glamorous job, especially if you're in the back of the house. I mean, you either love it or you're doing it because you can't really get anything else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's sort of the reality of it. Personally, I love it. I love being in the kitchen. I like the creativity. I like the smells. I like the atmosphere. I like the banter back and forth between the employees.
Mm-hmm.
I like the creativity side of it. But there's folks that whether they chose a path that put them into a situation where they don't have much education, or maybe they got in trouble and they can't get another job or whatever, and they're stuck. So what do? Well, they go wash dishes or chop vegetables in a restaurant because that's the only job they can get. Well, it's sad, but it's a fact of life. It's also a great starting place for people. It cracks me up when these cities are demanding $15 an hour minimum wages, and maybe in San Francisco or some of the larger cities that's viable, but it cracks me up. This is not supposed to be a living wage. It's supposed to be a starting wage for people to move on to bigger and better things, and it provides a great opportunity in our space here. We have a lot of college kids. We have a lot of high schoolers that come in, and they get paid reasonably well for doing 25, 30 hours a week's worth of work.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them money to spend, and they go out and buy their bicycles and do whatever they got to do. But it's not necessarily the end all.
Yeah. Do you guys? I'm curious. I've never really talked to any other owners about this, but I'm curious. Do you do anything to? Well, okay. A couple of things come to mind. One is folks that have that sense of. I mean, whose fault is that? It's us, right? It's the parents that raise these kids to have that entitled mentality. I mean, they didn't just come into it. They're not just naturally wired to feel that way. It's because they were raised to feel that way. So you got to start somehow with the parents, I think.
Well, it may be in the early years.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: parenting today isn't what it once was.
No.
Today, I grew up in a relatively unique environment. My parents were entrepreneurs. Both of them worked in the same business, so that I saw my mom and my dad from the beginning of the day to the end of the night. And I got parented. I was under constant watch, and I was under constant scrutiny, and constantly receiving feedback one way or the other. Today, it's not that way. Especially, back in the day when I grew up initially, of course, and this changed radically and very quickly. Most families in America in the 50s and 60s had one wage earner. Now there's two.
Yeah.
So the kids are off at school, right? And when they get off of school, they come home, and what's the first thing they typically do? Turn on the TV.
Yeah.
So the TV and the news media and that sort of thing is actually, in my opinion, taking more of a parenting role than parents.
Yeah.
And parents have abdicated the role. They do not, and I'm not saying everybody, because that would be absolutely wrong. And I've got plenty of good examples of parents who do whatever they need to do to be parents. My daughter and her husband is a perfect example. But anyway, I digress. The point I'm trying to make is that I think that there's way too much influence on young people from the media.
Mm.
And whether it's social media or the TV, that it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure.
and unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is socialistic in a sense, in its derivation. And here you are, you're watching these people, and there's a TV show about how, important it is for me to do this and to do that, and to, the government's going to take care of me. that's not reality, at
Yeah,
least not
yeah.
a reality. And when you go into, so anyway, it's a tough spin.
Well,
Uh,
do you guys, do you educate staff because maybe they're not getting it at home or elsewhere on, the importance of prudence financially and look, you're earning this. What are your costs of living? How do you start saving and things like that can help them.
you know,
I mean, it's not your
every
responsibility by any means.
no, I know.
But I'm wondering, and I'm only wondering that because maybe there's opportunities for people to go, God, this is a
There,
gee whiz. I didn't really
we
know all this. This is really cool to learn this. Now I'm kind of motivated to work a little harder and make a little more because I realize what could happen if I do.
the answer is yes, but it's not a formal program.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
we have an HR person, which essentially we had to we got large enough and we needed to bring in somebody who could deal with navigating the the path that the government lays out for you in terms of how to treat people and how to train them and whatever. Anyway, um, Kate is a very, very talented person. She's in a sense more of a social worker than she is an HR person.
Mm.
So she takes personal interest in these kids, and I say kids, employees, period, whether they're 30 or whether they're 18. Um, she literally counsels them on any number of things, and she's very good at it. She's been a lifeline to a lot of these J1 visa students from Thailand, for example. I mean, they come here, they don't have a lot of English skills. What do they do? How do they survive? How do they get to work? So all of those things are being provided by us, and of course the organization that brings them into the country to some degree or another. But Kate, I mean, my office is right next to Kate's, and I'll hear her counseling people almost every day at a very personal level. Like, for example, you know, guy will come in and he'll want to borrow money. Well, we're not a bank. It's not the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
I never turn people down if it's a dire situation, but I'm not here to loan you money so you can go buy cigarettes or something, or make your child support payment. That's not my responsibility. You have a car accident, you need your car fixed. Yeah, okay. If something like if your mother's sick and you need to take a trip, yeah, okay. I, but I hear her talking to people all the time about money and, you know, what is it going to take to save enough to get to the next step, making good decisions. It's amazing to me how many bad decisions people make. And, I've seen it in my family. I've seen it in other people's families. It's just, how can you make some of the decisions that you make
Mm-hmm.
to wind up in trouble? Um, but then again, even someone successful, like maybe myself, I got so heavily invested in real estate back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that uh, I became blinded to the fact that things were changing,
Yeah.
and I got caught. So as quote, educated and quote successful or whatever that I am, I made the same bad decisions. It's just different. It's not a day-to-day thing. It's like that could have been an earth-shaking event. Well, it was, but it didn't sink me. So thank God for that.
Yeah. Right. Right. So you can relate, and then, but it sounds like you've got somebody really good that helps with that stuff. And I don't know. I mean, that challenge it's really an interesting one for sure. As a part of our culture, and I hear it from. I mean, goodness gracious, every owner I speak to, I believe. But the it's good to hear that y'all. I mean, so you've got all these foreign students come in, so they've got a different mentality, right?
Yep.
Yeah, willing to
Well,
work hard and
90% of them, maybe more, 97, 98%, are extremely hardworking people. Now, let me give you a little bit of insight, since you brought it up, as to who these people are. These are foreign students. They are at the university level in their country.
Mm-hmm.
I have a guy who is running food to the tables at Fuddpuckers who is in his master's program in nuclear engineering in China.
Mm.
These are not stupid people.
Right.
These are highly intelligent, very, I mean, they're functioning at an incredibly high level in their home country. And
Yeah.
here they come into this environment and they take a job in a kitchen or running food out to a table, or if they have really good English skills, they can work at the front of the house in retail or whatever. But I'm in a sense blessed to be able to talk to these people because you learn their story,
Mm.
and they're here for a reason. They believe even the people from China and Thailand, this place is still the land of opportunity.
Right.
And they have such a diverse view of how things are perceived. They can't understand why people grumble about what they have to do here. It's nothing by comparison to what you have to do to make a living in their country.
Right. Yeah. It's all
You
essentially
know,
it's perspective, right?
it's exactly
It's
right.
hard to get that here when you haven't had to do the same things.
Yeah.
It really is. It's
In,
very
in
challenging.
China, you say the wrong word to the wrong person,
Right.
you disappear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned the other day that this is not political. This was just shocking to me. The internet in China is state controlled
Oh yeah. Yeah.
completely.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's no
I mean,
Google
there
in
ain't no
China.
Google.
No,
There's no
that's right.
Google.
That's right.
What the hell would I do without Google?
I know. I know.
And these kids are like, they're just amazed that there's so much freedom and that there's so much just stuff that they can just pull out of thin air in the United States. So we hear so many things about how bad our country is, and I'm gratified to know that when these people come from outside of the country, they don't see it that way. They see tremendous opportunity, and they see a great nation. And anyway, that's my patriotic spiel for
There
the
you
day.
go, man. I love it. Well, it's all a matter of how you look at things. I mean, you can take one view or you can take another. Well, let me ask you this. I know that's clearly changed because my next question was really structurally, kind of fundamentally, what's changed about the restaurant over the last 30, some odd years, Chester? I mean, clearly the labor issue, that's an obvious one because it's just gotten, gradually worse over time. But what else has changed about the restaurant business? And then on the flip side of that, what hasn't changed?
Well, one of the things that I think has changed in our area is the market has changed.
Hmm.
I don't know that that's specific to the question.
Well,
But
yeah, but that's a good point though. So because a lot of this stuff is particularly we're talking to independent restaurants here. The local dynamics vary massively from
right
place to place.
now,
So.
we're touristic, so we're seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and our tourists, for the most part, to the area, the wealth that they had back even when you were here in 2011, it's gone further south. So in other words, the people who are coming to Destin, average income is down from what it was a few years back, and it is down significantly from what it was 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Well, it means that people are looking for deals. They want cheap food. They want it fast, and they have plenty of options if they can't get it. So, how do we address that?
Yeah.
Well, we do have some things that we put on our menu that are low priced, and they provide people who don't want to spend $20 or thereabouts for a meal to order something that's in the $12 to $15 range, for example. And that's worked, but it's an actual conscious decision that I have to make. I like to serve a really big portion of food. I like to serve good quality food, and now I'm in a sense faced with, wow, I got to figure out something I can put on my menu that's less expensive. How do I do that?
Right.
So, and I mean, there's a million ways to do it without sacrificing, potential profit. So that's changed. Let's see what else has changed. Obviously, cost of product has changed. It's no longer as inexpensive as it once was to go out to eat. People are a lot of people are making decisions based upon what a business does, what it stands for in this day and age.
Yeah, that was one thing I was curious about. That really is something. What is their story? What are they trying to do? What are their? I mean, like you said, things like
right,
getting rid of plastics and having some kind of a social conscious or
yeah.
whatever. It really is becoming more and more important. People are exploring that more, I guess, nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely, and we are, in some respects, leading in that regard in this market. We do several things over the course of a year, the feel good type things that make a difference. We have a program that we do in the fall called Cops Rock, and it's a T-shirt as well. And basically we put on an event for local law enforcement, and it's a free day at Fuddpuckers. We've been doing that for about 5 years, and the proceeds from the T-shirts go directly to local charity. So that's one. We've also done some events with a company called Children in Crisis, where we did jet ski poker runs, and the profits of that, of course, go directly to Children in Crisis, which is essentially taking care of children who have home situations that involve them having to be removed from the home. Very worthy cause. The thing with the straws I told you about, the plastics, that's just Chester being socially conscious. It's definitely not a decision that is made to make more money, because it's surprisingly a paper straw is more expensive than a plastic one. Paper bags are far more expensive than plastic bags. Paper to go containers or the new ones that are made out of the corn derivatives are way more expensive than styrofoam. And I mean, it's crazy. It's almost like there's this new industry out there that's dawning, and maybe one day it'll become comparable, but it certainly isn't at this point in time. And it's very difficult to make a decision when you're going from, let's say a penny for a piece of plastic up to 8 cents.
Right.
Think about how many of those you sell a year or give away a year, and all of a sudden your decision becomes, wow.
That's real money. Yeah, for sure.
Real money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that stuff's tricky because it's hard. You can measure your cost. You can't measure the impact, right? Like does it make people want to eat there more? Does it make people tell more people about what you're? These are tough decisions.
Yeah. Well, it goes beyond that. It goes, all right. So not only do you have the expense of the product, now you have the expense of letting people know about the product.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we're I think we're making the right decision. I think it'll probably increase my costs a little bit, but I think that the way I'm doing it is probably going to be well received, because we are going to do a social media campaign. We are going to bring in the newspaper and the local TV stations and all this other stuff. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
So what else has changed? Golly.
Well, maybe. I mean, let me ask you this: what's been consistent? What hasn't changed over all those years? What do you do the same today that you did 36 years ago?
Well, I make the same hamburger today that I
There you
made
go.
36 years ago.
By the way, the
Uh,
Fudnator, is that what it's called? Is that the Fudnator challenge I saw on your website?
oh,
Well,
yeah,
tell me about
yeah.
that. I said, look,
Look at you. You're doing some
oh
research
yeah,
on
man. No, I wish I don't think y'all had that when I was there. Maybe you did. I don't know, but I'd like to try one of those
No,
things. Tell me
no.
about the challenge.
Well, yeah. Well, the Fudnator Challenge is one where if you eat this monster burger, it's actually three hamburgers combined with everything from we throw the kitchen sink at it, so to speak. It's got bacon and lettuce and tomato and cheese and chili and jalapenos and fried this and onion straws, yada yada yada. If you eat this thing in 30 minutes, you get a free T-shirt.
Ah, it's a
And
timed one. Okay, there you go.
no, yeah,
30
it's
minutes.
timed. It's kind of like man versus food kind of thing,
Yeah,
or whatever that show was that was on TV. Um, and it's actually it's pretty funny because the first person to win the darn thing was this skinny guy
yeah.
that made. I'm 350 pounds of man flesh, and this guy might have weighed 132 pounds. I couldn't even get I couldn't get half that thing in me, and this guy just devoured it in like 18 minutes, and he
That's
was ready
awesome.
to go for more. It's like whoa! But we've had a number of people win it, and it's always exciting because they're like, "Yeah, man, I got my T-shirt." It's
That's
pretty
awesome.
fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, people like that kind of stuff. It draws a crowd too, doesn't it? People are cheering them on and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, that's
We
cool.
also, we don't do any more contests, but we do have these really huge drinks, and we have a new thing that's the milkshakes, the extreme milkshakes. That's new this year. But what else is the same? The quality of the food's the same. In fact, uh, we went back to some purveyors that we used to deal with back in the day. So honestly, I think our food quality is probably better today than it has been in at least the last 10 years.
Yeah,
Um, it's still the same fun environment. It's unfortunate that we're not able to be quite as touchy feely in a sense, I guess is a way to put it, with our customers as we once were. I mean, I used to recommend to my staff to be extremely friendly, not just professional, but friendly.
hmm
When someone would come in the door, pat them on the back, thanks for coming to Fuddpuckers. And unfortunately, the times have changed to the point where that's not accepted anymore.
mm.
Um, we've had complaints in the past over people, well, don't touch me, or don't touch my child, don't talk to my child. Anyway,
Gee
it's
whiz.
I
God.
mean,
I mean, I
yeah,
understand the reason
it's
behind it, but it
nuts.
gets a little extreme. The pendulum can swing a little too far in one direction sometimes.
Yeah, it really it can. And something else. It, this is interesting. And I'm getting off the question. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Roll with it.
Like what's different? And I got to go back to that one. Ratings sites.
Mm.
Back when we had our last interview, I think TripAdvisor was probably a twinkling in someone's eye. Today, it's a force in the market, as are other ones like Google reviews and Facebook reviews. So I think more and more people are making decisions based on what other people think about a place.
Yeah.
And those things are manifested in these review sites. Well, wow, there is no throttle on this stuff.
hmm
So if you have a bad experience, if I say if, you're free to say pretty much whatever you want to say about that place.
Yeah.
What about if you had a bad day and you're just angry?
Yeah.
Well, blow the place apart for nothing.
Yeah.
What about if you're a competitor? We have evidence of competitors writing bad reviews about us. Happens all the time.
Do you Well, I got two questions about that, and I'm gonna let you go in a minute because I could talk to you all day, but I know you're busy, and we've been talking almost an hour or so. But I definitely am curious. Do you then respond to those so people can see? Okay, fine, this person said this, but here's what the
Yes.
restaurant says. And then second, are there ways? I've never thought about this until just now, but I mean, are there ways that you can like people will go, they're more likely to go put a negative review than a positive. Like if you're positive, you go, maybe you'll tell your
Absolutely.
friends or whatever, but to go actually take the time to do the review, you don't do that unless you're mad and you want to get them back or whatever. But are there ways to make it easy for guests while they're there to incent them somehow to do a
Well,
review because then maybe you get more positive ones, or I mean, how do
sure.
yeah.
You're not allowed under, and I'm only going to say TripAdvisor because I'm most familiar with them, and I use TripAdvisor a lot. But you're not allowed to incentivize a response. So in other words, you
Even if it's
can't
just,
say,
even if it's not asking them to do a positive response, you just can't say, "Could you give us a review for?"
well, sure, and do that,
Okay.
and we do that because we think that there's going to be way more positives than there are going to be
Yeah, yeah,
negatives.
yeah,
No question. The problem is that most people that have a positive feeling about what you did, they don't write anything.
yeah.
It's the ones that are angry about something that want to get, and it's kind of comical because some of these people think that they're, these super reviewers. They're gonna write about anything and everything. So, but the review stuff overall has made a huge impact on the restaurant industry,
Yeah.
mine as well as everybody else. And we literally have a social media person on staff who does virtually nothing more than answer comments
Hmm.
or reviews.
Gotcha.
And it's about a half-time job.
Yeah.
Now the other half of their time, I say, that they spend with us is done to promote things on social media. But Kaylee spends way more time, in my opinion, answering reviews and customer questions than she does posting. Um, Big change in the marketplace.
Hmm.
And the sad part of it is that not unless you're an educated person in terms of how these things work, you don't, unless you look deeper into the reviews and into the responses that a business gives, you don't really get the pure picture because that 5-star rating or 3-star rating or 2.5-star rating that you get, that only tells a portion of it. So very interesting
Hmm.
dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one for sure. It's good that you have the resources to help follow up and respond to those things because hopefully sometimes people see that and realize, okay, I don't, but like, I guess to your point, you have to really understand these things work. I don't really pay
Yeah.
attention to them anymore because I
Well,
just,
if you look at some of the reviews on our site, you'll see several people that say, we weren't going to come because we saw that you guys had a 4-star review or a 3.5-star review, whatever it is, but we took a chance and we're glad we did because one reviewer commented and we had a fantastic experience. So people are really paying attention. Well, I know this. Decisions are made using cell phones these days.
mm-hmm.
Mobile at an amazing rate. So dining choices, whether they're made because of an ad that someone puts out on Facebook, or whether they're made because someone's looking at a review site and wants to know what's the best restaurant in Destin.
Yeah.
Well, we're not the best restaurant in Destin, but if you type that in, we're not going to come up first. What's going to come up first is TripAdvisor or any number of these other rating sites. But if you look down in the column to where, the actual first restaurant that pops up, we're usually in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But the rating sites have taken over. They've almost monopolized the rankings in the search. So it's just something that we have to deal with.
Definitely didn't something you didn't have Back in the '80s for sure. Well, um, well, look, Chester, I want to thank you, and I want to just say that, man, like I love doing this. I always love talking to owners like yourself, because you've gone out 36 years ago. You took a risk. You've built something. You've created a great brand. You've created an institution in your town. It's a destination for people from all over. You've employed, I mean, if you've got 300 people now, over those years, you've employed tens of thousands of people, giving them jobs, giving them, opportunities. And, man, that's just what it's all about. That's the way I look at this, like that's a great story. And it's benefited so many people. You've made many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands probably of guests happy. You've given them opportunities to not just have great food and great service, but hang out with alligators and buy awesome tea. Like, it's just a really cool thing, man. So I know you're in the middle of it all the time. It's probably hard to sit back and think about that. And I know you don't want to sit down and toot your own horn, but I'll toot it for you because I think it's really cool. And I just admire people that do that and do that for as long as you've been able to do it, man, through all the crazy economic cycles and everything else. And you've plowed ahead, man, and kept your creative hat on and just done some awesome stuff. So I just feel really honored to have a chance to talk to you and to know you, man. I really appreciate that. I mean that very genuinely.
Well, I appreciate that, Will. It's always a pleasure, and I hope that we get a chance to see each other again here sometime soon. Let's stay in touch. It's an honor to talk to you. I appreciate you very much for thinking that talking to me is worthwhile putting on the air, and I'm here for you. So
I hear you, man. All right, get after it. Y'all have a good rest of your summer, and we'll catch up soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.